Hey guys, it's Chris, the yoga studio. I'm doing a little presentation now on masks and wearing face masks in the studio. There are lots of opinions about this and I just wanted to offer mine. I'm not medically qualified, but I'm going to do a little experiment to help you with an illustration I'd like to share with you. So wearing face masks works at two levels, right? So there's the emotional side of it and there's the physiological side of it. And for many of us, the emotional side of it, because in the UK and most Western countries, we're just not used to wearing a mask. Feels weird, it's uncomfortable, it's claustrophobic. Emotionally, we hate it. It's new, it's different, it's unwelcome. And it's been thrust on us for the past 2 months, 3 months by something quite severe that we're also not comfortable with. Wearing a mask in Japan is normal. They'll wear a mask after they've had a cold just to protect other people. It's a common courtesy thing. Here we don't feel that. When I went to visit my brother in Australia for his wedding, we stopped in Hong Kong and lots of airport officials had the masks on their face. We found it disconcerting. Culturally, we weren't ready for it. Physiologically, when you wear a mask, I'm told, it makes you dizzy because it stops the oxygen getting to your brain and you get dizzy, and that's not healthy for you. Well, that's not true. That's superimposed. That's untrue. Unless, of course, you go to extremes. If you do extreme sprinting and hold something over your mouth as well, yes, eventually you'll make yourself dizzy. But bear with me for a second. I can feel resistance already. We are designed to hold oxygen in our blood at very high levels. And that is the reason why we can hold our breath for long periods of time. So people like Wim Hof will hold his breath for up to 10 minutes. Crazy. Don't try it. It's dangerous. But physically, physiologically, he can do it. He's worked past all the psychological barriers. He can do that. And he's training other celebrities like Russell Brand. He can hold his breath for up to 4 minutes now. Crazy. Don't do it. But if you hold your breath for half a minute or a minute or 2 minutes, your body is equipped to see you through. Yes, you'll want to take a breath. It's called a dive reflex. You'll want to inhale, but you're not suffering. And most importantly, your oxygen levels are not depleted so quickly that you're getting dizzy because your brain's being starved of oxygen. That's not what's happening. I'm going to do a little experiment to illustrate this point. I'm going to use a blood oximeter, which measures how much oxygen there is in my blood. It's the same as the ones they use in the hospitals. Usually they'll use it to measure heart challenges or lung challenges. And what it does is it shows you by percentage how much oxygen saturation there is in my blood. So typically speaking, 50 would be dangerously low, 60 is not good, 70 is low as well, 80 is not great, 85 is okay. We get up into the 90s and most of us are at high 90s, right? So 95% blood oxygen saturation is normal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure mine, hold my breath and see if it drops. Now if it drops, then maybe there's something in the argument that not breathing properly with a mask on deprives your brain of oxygen. But if it stays at the same level when I hold my breath, then that tells us a different story, because holding my breath is much more severe than breathing with a mask on. So if I switch this puppy on, I'm going to come to the camera so you can see me operate it and I can see it too. I pop it on my finger like that. I'm going to press the on button and we'll wait for it to measure my blood oxygen, which would be the top number. So yeah, 98 already. Now if I hold my breath, let's see if we can make it drop. So if I trained, I could probably go for longer than that if I was in one of those breathing classes, but you can see it was 98%, it's dropped off to nothing now. It was 98% all the way through, and I was holding my breath, and that's an extreme restriction of air. And my brain wasn't deprived of any oxygen because my blood oxygen saturation stayed level for these short periods of time. Now, if I put a mask on, I've got my Abba Yoga colour mask here. If I pop this onto my face like this, instantly I feel uncomfortable. I'm not used to it. From your point of view, you can't see my face anymore, you can only see my eyes. So culture-wise, and psychologically, this doesn't feel comfortable because we're just not used to it. You know, it's like walking out into a cold day with no clothes on. It's not nice. But the reason I'm encouraging the use of masks in the studio is because the government, and you can have all the conspiracy theories you want, the government is advising us that wearing a mask protects other people in a radius from us. Because if we're asymptomatic and carrying the COVID-19 virus, we can breathe it out and other people can contract it and they can pass it on. So I want to have an environment where we are as safe as we possibly can, which is why, yes, I am encouraging the use of masks. And you may feel a difference in your breathing, but there are a couple of things there. At a physiological level, you won't be depriving your brain of oxygen in a yoga class just because you're wearing a mask. Your blood saturation will still be good. I'll measure mine in a minute when I've had this thing on for a while, a couple of minutes or so. I'll put this thing back on and we'll measure it, see if it's dropping at all. That's at one level. At another level, when you have a mask on, something beautiful that does happen because you become so aware of your breathing. You're breathing in, you're breathing out, and you can hear your own breath more so because of the mask, right? And what do we do in yoga? We focus on an inhale and an exhale. Inhale, exhale. And what I'm noticing in feedback from students who are trying this is it's much easier than they thought. They forget the mask was there, and it's not causing them any problems. So they're getting over their psychological barrier and moving into the physiological benefits. Now, I've been holding this on my face for a while now, chatting to you. I'm going to put the blood oximeter back on again, and you'll see me do this. There's no clipping, no editing, right? And we'll see what the reading is now when I've got the mask on. 96 is going up. 97. Is it going to? Yeah, 98. So I'm wearing a mask. I'm talking to you, which is probably about as much physical exertion as I would need on my lungs if I was in there practicing yoga. And my blood oxygen level isn't dropping. So the assumption that wearing a mask deprives your brain of oxygen is superimposed. It's not true. It's emotional. I get that you feel uncomfortable wearing a mask, but we're doing it for the benefit of each other. We're trying to stay safe. When I'd sent my survey out, a lot of students said that they would be happy to wear a mask and would feel safer wearing a mask. Some students said, no way. Some students tried it and said, I feel really uncomfortable, I feel like I can't breathe. I get that, I really do. And that is why I've come to a balance. What I'm asking for is this. When you come in through the front door, you're wearing a mask. When you're in reception, you're wearing a mask. When you walk through this door and put your mat down, you're wearing a mask. When you step onto your mat, if your psychological barriers are so strong that you feel the need to take it off, then I'm happy for you to take your mask off, wrap it around your wrist for me so it's not on the floor, because that's where you're capturing any viral propellants, right? So keep it on your wrist. And whilst you're on the mat, if you can't bear it, you can wear this here. But then when you step off your mat, please put your mask back on again so that you can roll your mat up. See, I'm not very good at this, am I? Roll your mat up, and then when we come out into the reception area here, we're all protecting each other as much as possible. So that's as much as I can ask for. I hope this video has been really useful to you and perhaps begun to soften your doubts about oxygen in your brain if you're wearing a mask, because that isn't true. Physiologically, you're not going to do that. Only if you start sprint running long distances, then you may start to make a difference. None of these things are black and white. It's not binary, right? The human body works in curves and arches and ebbs and flows. So if you go to an extreme, yes, you can start to affect your brain and other parts of your body. It's like extreme divers, free breath divers. They go down for 7 or 8 minutes. And they hold their breath for a long period of time. And yes, it's true that when you hold your breath for that long, there are protein markers in your blood and it can start causing or triggering brain damage. But that's extreme. It's extreme. You're not going to do that in a yoga studio. It's just not going to happen. In a yoga studio, you're going to feel the emotions of having a mask on your face. And I can assure you, those emotions will pass. And the reason we're doing this is for the protection of all. So please try wearing your mask. If you have to take it off whilst you're on your mat, keep it on your wrist, and then pop it back on again when you leave the studio. But know that wearing a mask, and if you wear your mask, I notice a lot of you are wearing a mask in the studio, it's not going to affect the oxygen to your brain. There are other physiological levels that we can examine, including how much CO2 is building up in the lungs, and the CO2 does build up in the lungs. CO2 has a bad rep. We think it's bad and we have to exhale all the CO2 and get rid of it. That's not true either. We need a balance, oxygen and CO2. Typically what we actually do is when we breathe in a stress situation, we breathe too much carbon dioxide out of our lungs, and that subtle drop creates problems. We increase the amount of CO2, we can maintain good breathing. More on that another day. Don't want to bore you today. But when you wear a mask, actually you're encouraging better levels of CO2. Just ask yourself the question, why do people offer you a paper bag to breathe into when you're nervous or anxious or having a panic attack? There's nothing magic in the bag. You're just reabsorbing some of the CO2 you'd normally off-gas when you panic breathe. More about that another time. For now, have a think about using your mask. You're welcome in here. You can take it off when you're in there if you need to, but remember the reason why we're doing it. We're doing it for the protection of all. I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you in here very soon. Namaste, guys.